3 o'clock in the morning, October 26, 1984, a German Autobahn, the A45 near the city of Hagen. Two truck drivers are rolling through the dark when their headlights catch something in the ditch. A small blue Volkswagen Golf crashed, and someone, a figure in a light-colored jacket, walking around the wreck. They pull over. They run back, and the figure in the light jacket is gone. Inside the car, on the passenger seat, they find a man. He is badly hurt. He is barely conscious, and he is completely naked. They ask him what happened, and with the last strength he has, the naked man tells them something that makes no sense at all. There were 4 men in this car, he says. 4 men. Who ran? Were they your friends? No. He dies on the way to the hospital. His name was Günter Stoll, and hours earlier, in his bedroom, in front of his wife, he had suddenly sat up and said, "Now it all makes sense." Then he wrote 6 letters on a piece of paper, YOG'TZE, and crossed them out. 6 letters that exist in no language on earth. 6 letters no one has ever explained. 6 letters, and by morning the man who wrote them was dead. This is Madame Noir, and this is the YOG'TZE case. Let me take you to the Sigerland, rolling hills, deep forests, small villages, a quiet corner of Western Germany where everyone knows everyone. This is where Günter Stoll lived, in a village called Anjausen, 34 years old, married, a trained food technician, a man who knew factories, production lines, additives, recipes, and in the autumn of 1984, an unemployed man, a man with too much time to think, because something was wrong with Günter Stoll, and it had been wrong for months. He felt watched, he felt followed. He talked about it, not in details, never in details, but again and again he spoke of them. They were after him. They wanted to hurt him. Who were they? He never said. Maybe he couldn't say. Maybe he didn't dare. Now, I want to be honest with you because that is what we do on this channel. When a man feels persecuted by a nameless them, there are 2 possible explanations. One is illness, a mind turning against itself, seeing patterns and enemies where there are none. The other explanation is simpler and darker, that someone really was after him. For months, the people around Günter Stoll quietly assumed the first explanation. He was stressed, he was out of work, he was struggling, but keep the second explanation in your pocket. Because in a few hours on the night of October 25th, Günter Stoll is going to be run over, stripped, staged in his own car, and left to die on the Autobahn. And suddenly, them doesn't sound so imaginary anymore. October 25th, 1984. A Thursday evening, Günter is at home in Anjausen with his wife. It is almost 11 at night. He is sitting in an armchair in the bedroom, quiet, apathetic, somewhere far away in his own head. His wife is nearby. And then, out of nothing, he snaps upright. "Jetzt geht mir ein Licht auf. Now I see it, now it all makes sense." Like a man who has been working on a puzzle for months and just found a missing piece. He grabs a piece of paper, he writes 6 characters, AOG apostrophe CE, YOG'TZE, and then immediately, in the very same moment, he crosses it out again, as if writing it down was already too dangerous, as if the paper itself could betray him. What did he see in that moment? What clicked? What did a frightened, unemployed food technician suddenly understand at 11 o'clock at night? We don't know. And here is the tragedy that will haunt this case forever. That little piece of paper, the single most important piece of evidence in this entire story, was never examined by anyone. his wife threw it away. Think about that. The last thing Günter Stoll ever wrote. The thing he understood moments before he walked out the door and into his death. Went into the trash before the sun came up. She only told the police about the 6 letters half a year later, which means everything we know about YOG'TZE rests on one person's memory of a note that no longer exists. The police can't even be completely certain the letters were YOG'TZE at all, or whether that G was actually the number 6. Hold that thought. The number 6, it will matter later. Whatever Genter understood in that armchair, it put him in motion. He gets up, leaves the house, gets into his blue VW Golf, and drives to his favorite pub, his Stammkneipe, in the next village, Wilsdorf, a familiar room, familiar faces, the one place a frightened man goes when he doesn't want to be alone. He orders a beer, and then, in front of everyone, Günter Stoll falls, not a stumble, not a slip. He tips straight backwards off his bar stool, like a switch being flipped, and hits the floor face first enough to leave a wound. The landlord and the guests rush to help him up. And here is the strange part, he wasn't drunk. He had barely touched his beer, and the people there said he seemed sober. When they got him back on his feet, Genter said something odd. He said, "I was suddenly gone. Gone, not dizzy, not sick, gone. As if someone had briefly switched him off. Was it a seizure, a blackout, a body already in crisis? Or, and I only ask because of what happens next. Was there something in that glass we will never know? Because instead of going to a doctor, instead of going home, Günter Stoll walks out of the pub, gets back into his Golf, and drives off into the night. It is around 11:30. For the next 90 minutes, Günter Stoll vanishes. 1 o'clock in the morning, a tiny village called Hagersilbach, the place where Günter grew up. His parents' house still stands here, and right next to it lives an old woman he has known since childhood, a deeply religious woman, someone he trusts, and at 1 a.m., Günter Stoll is standing at her door. Imagine her, an old lady, torn out of sleep, opening the door to a grown man she's known since he was a boy, and he is pale, agitated, urgent, pressing her into a conversation she never asked for. And what he tells her is this: something terrible is going to happen tonight. A väterliche Ereignis, a terrible, dreadful event. Tonight, she doesn't know what to do with this. It is the middle of the night. The man in front of her seems confused, frightened, not himself. So she gives him the advice any kind neighbor would give. Go next door, she says, go to your parents. And Genter answers, listen to this. No, they wouldn't understand what this is about. Not, I don't want to wake them. Not, it is too late. They wouldn't understand, as if what he was carrying was too big, too specific, too dangerous for his own mother and father. So she tries again, then drive home, Günter. Drive home to your wife. And he goes quiet and says, you're probably right. I'll do that. He walks back to his car. He drives away into the dark. She is the last person who ever spoke with Günter Stoll and lived to tell us about it. Home is maybe 20 minutes away. He never arrives, and once again, for the second time this night, Günter Stoll is simply gone. 2 missing hours, no witness, no sighting, nothing, until 3 a.m. on an Autobahn 100 kilometers away. The A45, just before the exit Hagen-Sedi, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 truck drivers, separately, independently, see the same thing, a blue VW Golf, crashed into the ditch, and near it in the headlights, a person in a light-colored jacket, moving around the wreck. Both assume that is the driver. He is hurt, he needs help. They stop. They call the police from an emergency column, but when they reach the car, the person in the light jacket is nowhere, vanished into the dark between the trees along the embankment. Gone, what they find instead is Günter Stoll on the passenger seat. Remember that, the passenger seat, gravely injured, clinging to consciousness, and naked, completely naked in October on the Autobahn. They speak to him, and Günther, fading, gives them his final statement. The last sentences of his life. There were 4 men in the car. They ran away. Were they friends of yours? No, 4 men. Not friends gone into the night. Perhaps one of them wearing a light jacket. Seen by 2 independent witnesses. And never found. Günter Stoll died on the way to the hospital, and with him died every answer. What happened in those 2 missing hours, who the 4 men were, why a man who told his neighbor at 1 a.m. that something terrible would happen tonight was proven right by 3. He knew. That is the part I can't let go of. He knew. So far, this could almost pass as a tragic accident. A confused man, a night drive, a crash. Then the forensic report came back and the accident fell apart. Finding number 1, Günter Stoll's fatal injuries did not come from that crash. The damage to his body and the damage to his car told 2 completely different stories. Finding number 2, he had been run over by a vehicle somewhere else at another location entirely. Finding number 3, and this is the one that turns this case from strange into sinister. When that vehicle hit him, Günter Stoll was already naked. Let that sink in. Somewhere in the night between 1 and 3 a.m., a naked man was run over on the ground. And then somebody or several somebodies picked up the dying man, placed him on the passenger seat of his own VW Golf, drove that Golf up to 100 kilometers away from his home region, and rammed it into a ditch on the A45 to make it look like a crash. That is not an accident. That is not a panicked hit and run driver. That is work. That is logistics. Whoever did this needed to move a car, move a body, and walk away from an Autobahn in the middle of the night, which, by the way, is exactly what 2 truck drivers may have witnessed. A figure in a light jacket, leaving the scene at 3 a.m. And one more detail, quiet but devastating: his clothes were never found, not in the car, not on the road, not anywhere to this day. The police followed every thread they had. Drivers reported a hitchhiker that night at the Hagen-Sidon ramp heading toward Frankfurt. Never identified the figure in the light jacket, never identified. Investigators even dug into rumors that Günter had brushed against the drug scene during holidays in the Netherlands. Nothing decisive ever came of it. A man is run over naked, staged in his own car, and abandoned. 4 men are mentioned by the dying victim, and not one of them has ever been found. Which brings us back to the note YOGTZE, maybe with an apostrophe, maybe with a 6 instead of a G. The police checked. That word exists in no language in the world. It is not a name. It is not a place. It is not a word. So what was it? In April 1985, Germany's most famous crime show, Aktenzeichen XC Angel Est, the program that would later inspire Unsolved Mysteries, took on the case together with the criminal police in Hagen. Millions watched, and among the callers were several amateur radio operators. All of them independently said the same thing. If you read that G as the number 6, YOG'TZE, then it is not gibberish anymore. It is a call sign, a ham radio call sign from Romania. Yo is the international prefix for Romanian radio amateurs. The 6 marks a district, 1984, the Cold War, a jobless man in the West German provinces. writing down what might be an Eastern Bloc radio call sign, and crossing it out like it burned his fingers. Is that the answer? Was Günther listening to something on the airwaves he wasn't supposed to hear? It sounds like a spy novel. The lid was checked, and like everything in this case, it dissolved into fog. There are other readings. Some point out that Günther was a food technician and wonder if YOG'TZE was shop, token abbreviation, a product code, something like yog, for yogurt scribbled in a professional shorthand. It is a popular theory, but I'll be straight with you. It is speculation. No document, no colleague, no file has ever confirmed it. And then there is the coldest reading of all, that the letters mean nothing, the static of a struggling mind. Six random characters that we, the living, have spent 40 years trying to turn into a message, because the alternative is unbearable, that the last thing he wrote was noise. But if it was just noise, answer me this: why did he cross it out? You don't censor noise, you censor secrets. Every investigator, every journalist, every armchair detective who touches this case ends up torn between two stories. Let me give you both. Honestly, story one: illness. A man loses his job. Over months, he slides into paranoia. The nameless, them, the fear, the apathy in the armchair. That night, something breaks, a moment of false clarity. Now it all makes sense. Six meaningless letters immediately crossed out. The collapse in the pub, a body or a mind misfiring. The desperate 1 a.m. visit, the prophecy of doom. A man in crisis, not a man with information. It is coherent. It is sad, and medicine has a name for nights like that. But story one has a hole in it. And the hole is this: paranoid men are not run over naked at another location, placed in their own passenger seat, and driven 100 kilometers to a staged crash site by persons unknown. His fear may have been an illness. His death was not. His death had plural. Story 2, he was right. For months, they really were watching him. That evening, he finally understood something, wrote it down, crossed it out, and went to a public place, his pub, perhaps to feel safe. The fall from the bar stool, perhaps nothing, perhaps something slipped into a glass. The visit to the old woman, a man trying to warn someone, anyone, that tonight was the night. And then the 2 lost hours, the 4 men, the vehicle that crushed him, the staging on the A45 in story 2. Every strange detail of that evening stops being a symptom and becomes evidence, the uncomfortable truth. Both stories can be partly right. A man can be ill and murdered. Fear can be irrational, and then one night find its reason. But whichever story you choose, you cannot escape the physical facts. Someone ran him over, someone moved him, someone staged it, someone walked away in a light jacket. Somebody did this, and somebody somewhere has known for 40 years. Who? Günter Stoll was buried in the Siegerland, in the earth of the villages. He never really left. The case remains open. In Germany, murder never expires, Mord wird nicht. So the file in Hagen can never be closed, only paused. Every few years, a newspaper pulls it back into the light. YOG'TZE has returned to it decades later. The Stern magazine calls it one of the most mysterious unsolved deaths in German history, and the 6 letters have outlived the man who wrote them. YOG'TZE is now the name of the case itself, a word that exists in no language, standing in for everything we do not know. What he understood in that armchair, where he was in those lost hours, why they took his clothes, who the 4 men were, a piece of paper in a trash can in 1984. That is how close we came to the answer. If someone out there, even now, even this late, remembers a light jacket, a hitchhiker near Hagen, 74 men, and a blue Golf, On an October night, the file in Hagen is still open. It only takes one voice, so I leave the case with you. Illness or assassination, radio call sign, product code, or noise. Who do you think the four men were? Write me your theory in the comments. I read every single one, and the best theories from this community have genuinely surprised me before. And if you're new here, welcome to Madame Noir. This is where I tell true crime the quiet way, the unsolved cases from Europe that nobody tells you in English. Carefully researched, fact checked, no gore, no hysteria, just the story and the questions it leaves behind. If that is your kind of night, subscribe, leave a like so more mystery lovers find us, and ring the bell because the next case is already on my desk. Next time, a summer night in Finland. 1963 teenagers in one tent, and the one who survived. Lake Bodom, until then, leave the light on,